Marwa Al-Sabouni is one of the guest directors of the Brighton Festival this year. She is an architect from Syria and the author of two books, Building for Hope and The Battle for Home, subtitled The Vision of a Young Architect in Syria. Both books are published by Thames and Hudson. In her books, she argues that the failures in architecture and urban planning in Syria before the war laid the foundations for a lot of the problems to come. Marwa Al-Sabouni once said, "Putting Syria back together is what I am trying in imagination to do." She has travelled the world to speak about the challenges involved in this vision, and her TED Talk has been viewed over 1 million times. She lives and works in Homs in Syria, but she will be appearing in conversation in Brighton on the evening of Saturday 14th of May at Brighton Girls' School on Montpellier Road. Refugee Radio caught up with Marwa near the seafront in Brighton to talk about her work. You'll have to accept our apologies in advance as there's a bit of noise in the background of this recording. The interview was recorded by Anna Scott and Stephen Silverwood with a little help from our good friend Rami.
My first question is, what was the school of Modernism and how did it destroy urban identity in Syria before the war?
So this term I use in The Battle for Home to refer to the atmosphere that was governing the Syrian cities before the war. So it was up to any man in power to decide what kind of direction the city would go to. At one point, a governor was obsessed with the Gulf and with Dubai, and so he changed the building code. Building blocks and towers start popping up around the city, and large portions of the old city also were being destroyed to keep up with the building fever that was happening. In another occasion, you would have another governor who would, hate a special kind of trees, and he would go around and chop trees that were 80 years old or 100 years old to replace them with another set of trees or vegetation. So it's up to their mood, and in that sense it destroyed any sense of memory and any sense of belonging to the vast majority of us who were watching in pain our city being destroyed.
And of course you study at university or at colleges the high concepts of modernism and postmodernism and this and that, and actually when you get to it, it's just dependent on the whims of whoever's doing the building that day. And I wanted to ask just quickly, you mentioned it's the military construction company. Is that so? It was all kind of state or military run. Who was actually doing the building?
It's managed by the military forces, and it's a construction company that specialized in building infrastructure for the army. But they take commissions from all the municipalities in the cities. Of course, there is a corruption element involved here because they get the bids in quite not a straightforward manner. They are famous of bad quality finishing and this sort of that left its mark on the buildings. You would have buildings that were designed beautifully to a certain degree, and then the implementation of the construction will be done in a very corrupted way and in a very poor way that would eliminate any feature of beauty that was involved in the aesthetics of the original design.
Sort of like the B&Q of Syria then. People want Syria to be like it was in the past again, but you want to make it better. Can I ask, what would better look like for the shanty towns known as the informal settlements of Homs?
So informalities are a feature of the Syrian cities, and they are informal areas built illegally outside of the regularity plan of each city, and they are not governed by a building code. They are improvised by people who build those because of the need of having homes and because of the impossible prospect of acquiring a home inside the city. It's a feature of a global feature, not only in Syria. It's in the region. It's spread in the region, but also you can find it in Latin America and in India and other parts of the world. where the same difficulty of acquiring a home pushes people to improvise homes. But what is important here is to remember that the instability that this kind of building or a kind of built environment involves, because people are constantly being threatened that their homes will be demolished. And you would be surprised to learn that 40% of the Syrian population prior to the war lived in informal areas, and this number hiked to 60% after the war, and probably more every day because of the economic situation right now. So I think it's really important to also remember that the informal areas in Syria are related to a colonial legacy that we overlook in most cases, and it's related to the shift from the Ottoman rule to the French mandate, which involved shifting the registration of certain lands. And I speak about this in Building for Hope in more detail, but this kept those areas in a complex situation that the ownership of the property is not defined, and that's why the government looks the other way and leave people live in those informal areas.
British slums were also cleared and demolished, especially after the Second World War, and this destroyed lots of poorer communities, houses, schools and pubs. And it forced people to move to state-owned tower blocks and council estates. And these communities never really recovered and were sacrificed in the name of modernism and progress. Have you got any thoughts about how this could be avoided in the rebuilding of homes?
Well, I think the word rebuilding here is very important, and that's why we chose this as the theme for Tristan Sharps, my co-guest director, my fellow guest director, working with Brighton Festival on the theme of rebuilding, because rebuilding is a global issue now, and as you mentioned, we tend to forget that most of the global population right now struggle with the concept of home first, and with the fact that acquiring home or owning a property is almost out of reach of so many young people and so many people around the world. How to avoid that? I think we should think about how to avoid that globally, not only in homes. And I think in each city there is a specific context to look at. Like I was mentioning before, in homes, for example, and in Syria in general, there is a whole different context than other parts of the world where we are affected by the colonial legacy and by what modernism really mean to us, which obviously a different scenario for British cities. But what is in common is the fact that people need to have the right to live in their cities, and we have to acknowledge that it's a political and an economic situation, but also it's something that is related to how buildings look and how cities are planned, and that's what I discuss in my work, and that's what my books focus on. The bit that we are responsible for as the people who are involved in design and people who are involved in also city governing, how to break this cycle. Because the question of when you say something is political, something is economic, it sounds that it's a matter out of our reach, is something that is bigger than us. But when you look at a place where you could break the cycle, something that all of us can be involved in, there is hope. And this is what I try to introduce in my work.
You've written about the spiritual differences between Christian and Islamic architecture being manifest in spatial differences. In the Western school of brutalist architecture, we find an entirely atheistic sensibility. And I wondered, what would a modernised Arabic architecture look like if it could be shorn of the Islamic?
Is there an Arabic architecture?
Is there what if there was, what would it be if it wasn't Islamic architecture?
Well, I think it's a question of identity here we're discussing, and I don't think there is an Arabic identity. I don't think identity is defined by language. So in my view, it's not it's not plausible to think of language as form of identity. Otherwise, we'll have the same identity. You speak in the same tongue at the moment, and then we'll have common ground, but we don't have the same identity. Identity is always linked to the way we view the world, how we connect to the universe, and in that sense it's a religious matter. It's something that is spiritual, whether you believe or disbelieve. It's something that is related to how you think of yourself as a creature, and how you think what's the purpose of you being here with the people around you and with creatures around you. So this answers one bit of your question, which is if there is actually, it could be Arabic architecture. Well, the short answer, in my view, there cannot be Arabic architecture. It's part of the dilemma in the region, by the way, how we identify ourselves, and it's something that we also had to deal with in the aftermath of colonization of the region. So it's all about how we kind of made our minds around the idea of, where people, differed in their views about abandoning this legacy of the falling Ottomans, which were the last Islamic identity, let's say, as a collective identity, and how to embrace progress, which was kind of imported. It didn't spring from natural conditions. It was always related to the fact that we were colonized, and that colonization brought progress with. And that's I think, is the root of the whole identity crisis we have in the region.
And then, I suppose, connected to ideas around development and modernity, with the sort of the French influence on town planning.
Yeah, because it's also a controversial issue in the West itself, because the West itself had to make the same choice in the aftermath of the World War II between abandoning what was religious but also linked to class division and to feudalism and to royalty and nobility and all of that, and what the general public thought that is the source of all the evil that was happening, and between and that's actually what shaped modern architecture, that there is a replacement for that past and there is another solution. But it was an economic sham as well, because there was something to be sold in that void that was created in the cities, and it was also ideological, and it's something that the West doesn't like to discuss very much, and it's something that was imposed on what you call the Middle East. I find it difficult to accept the term, because this is a whole another topic.
It's not east of anywhere if you're from there. Yeah,
it doesn't make sense in the Middle East, and even in geography it doesn't, and it encompasses it puts countries from Asia and countries from Africa, and this within the same within the same group, but also in a position or in confrontation with let's say Spain and France and Italy, who are could be circled within the same geographical territory, if you will. So I find the Mediterranean region more acceptable based on geographical notions.
Thank you. So first of all, while you're here in Brighton, can you tell me a little bit about your involvement with the festival?
Well, it's a great opportunity to be involved with the festival, something that is quite novel to what I do as an architect, but also connects in many ways to what matters to me as an architect and as a person. And it's a very exciting occasion to be collaborating with Tristan Sharps and around with the entire team of Brighton Festival. We've worked on the theme and on the program and on so many, on shaping the vision of this year's festival, which revolves around the theme of rebuilding. But also the festival gave us, as architects, my husband and I, our partners, and as an office, they gave us the opportunity to do a pop-up structure for them. We called it the Riwak, which is the Arabic word for colonnade. And the idea behind the Riwak is to create a meeting and an event space that connects what we thought is as a team, with the festival, what we thought is an empty plot or a void in the city's architecture or space. And the architectural idea or the concept behind it is the colonnade is a transitional space. It's a space that connects what is closed, which is the building, with what's open, which is the space around it. And in our view, we thought of the city and the beach, where there is this territory of this empty lawn that was separated from the city by the cottages, the bathing cottages. We thought about something that connects the beach to the city and, make a meeting place for people. And that's how we used the metaphor of this architectural form, which is the colonnade or the Riwak.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. And what does this mean to you personally?
Well, it's a great opportunity to first of all, as an architect, to experiment and work, with what you think is important theoretically, and to see it being built. It's of course it's every architect's dream to see one's work built and to see people interact with what you created, to see people walking around, being curious about, as the festival is doing, having events in and around. It's a very exciting opportunity, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
You've told us a little bit about the concept of the Riwak. What kind of events are going to be held there?
Well, there is a whole array of events that revolves around music and poetry and reading. There are brilliant bands of different groups from the city who will be playing in different times and different dates. You can find all the information online at the festival's website. But also there is poetry reading. There is also children literally hour. They will read stories as well. So there is a whole range of events that invites the whole city to come and from different groups, from different ages, to come and interact and to exchange as the Riwak and the festival is inviting everybody to do.
That sounds really exciting. And am I right that while you're in Brighton too, you're also going to be doing an event on the 14th of May?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There is a conversation that between me and Irish architect Grania Hassett that will take place on the 14th, and we will be discussing ideas of home and belonging and architecture and community and a whole range of topics that we would love to see people invited and to participate with us. Just come and we look forward to seeing you.
That was Anna Scott and Stephen Silverwood from Refugee Radio in conversation with Marwa Al-Sabouni, guest director of the Brighton Festival. Apologies again for the noise in the background. Marwa will be speaking at Brighton Girls on Montpellier Road on the 14th of May, and the Riwak is open now on the seafront, so get down to Hove Lawns near the King Alfred and check it out. There will be loads of refugee and migrant musicians playing during the month, courtesy of our friends at Bestfoot Music, as well as lots of other events. Full details can be found on the Brighton Festival website.